Now basically what this does is obviously you can't move it up or down because this is basically just on the volume, as you can hear. Now obviously if we move this to, like, for example, a saw wave, it's a lot more stabby. But we want this sort of smoother sort of waveform. So in which case, if you want to try something different and cool, you could try the stabby sort of plucky sound. I prefer the waveform, the sine wave, sorry. Now, the key to this sound is actually putting the LFO on pretty much everything. So we're putting it on the dry wet of the reverb. So we're kind of getting it up enough so it basically brings in the... it almost makes it a wider sound when the volume is actually active, if that makes sense. So when the sound is actually loud, when it's playing and not quiet, you know, in the peak of the LFO, the reverb is actually playing a lot louder. And the same with the dimension expander. So we'll whack this on here, maybe take it down, and maybe play some chords with it. And that's basically the sound. The only other thing you could do if you wanted to would be a bit of EQ and maybe add some low end, just so you don't have to add another bass in between there. So it could be something. And then also a bit of more high end if you need it. But that's pretty much the sound in a sense. It's not too much of a difficult sound. It's just how you utilize it basically. Now the cool thing about this is because it's very simple, you can do a lot with it. So for example, if you wanted to maybe add a comb filter so it kind of phases through, or a flanger or something, or change the waveform to maybe a square. You've got so many different variations of what you could do. Another cool thing I like is actually when you bring the pitch cutoff down a little bit more. So if we just bring it up, just hear the full velocity of what it can be. I like it just a little bit over because it gives it a sort of a closer sound, but it's still quite wide. But that's basically the sound. Now, that's just in the massive, but there's other things you can do to it. For example, you can compress it, or you can add some room reverb to it. It gives it a lot of different textures, no matter what you do afterwards, but that's the basis of the sound. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and made a little MIDI clip, so it sounds a bit like this. Or using something called parallel chords, which we can go into a theory tutorial. But what I'm going to be showing you on the sound design basis is just the process I showed you at the beginning of the video. So the processing I did really was just a bit of compression, and I used the multiband dynamics to get this effect. Now the idea of this processing was to kind of increase the release on the high end. So what you want to do is compress the high end enough to turn back up the output so the high end is a little bit more compressed, and it just kind of it helps wash over the chords a bit better. So we're going to go straight into it. So we're going to be using B and A, which is below the threshold and above the threshold. So first of all, we're going to concentrate on the high end here. So we're just going to solo the high end so you can hear it. Now let's set the threshold as at the threshold of -6 is a bit too low, so we're just going to push it up a bit more. And obviously the more I move it down and up, you can't actually hear a difference. Now the way you start hearing a difference is when you pull up the ratio. So we're just going to pull it up a tiny bit. Cool. And also before we actually, so if we imagine this in a chain, so input, effect, and then output, we're just going to boost the input of it. Not too much, but just enough for it to really be acting a lot. Now we'll concentrate on the mid-band. So in the mid-band we're doing something similar, but we'll be using a bit more ratio. So take it down a bit more. You can see the mid-band really kind of comes out of its shell a bit more. So we're going to push the input a bit more as well.